Okay, I'm not saying because Bobby Kennedy endorsed Trump, you should vote for Trump or anything. I keep this a politics-free zone, but I'm making a little bit of an exception today just because of the conversation that I think Bobby Kennedy started with his candidacy. And this is an article that I found from the Daily Wire where who wrote this? Mary Margaret Olahan. And the title of the article is, "There's a Movement Happening." Hey there, everyone. Welcome to the Healthy CEO Show. I am your host, Jason Wright, co-founder and CEO of Authentic Health Partners. And today I want to talk about something that I normally don't talk about on the show, which is politics, sort of. I don't want this to be too political, but I can't help but bring politics into this because I'm going to be talking about one of the political candidates running for president this year that, unless you've been living under a rock, then you don't know who Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is and the waves that he made during this 2024 presidential election. And I think that Bobby Kennedy's entry into this race and the things that he talked about and the things that he got people thinking about, and this population of which I consider myself one of, meaning the folks in the health and wellness space and those of us who either make our living or focus on very intently our health and wellness and that of others. He brought this population into the political fold in a way that has never been done before. And I think that's incredibly important. And here's why. But before I get started, I want to ask you to please click subscribe. As you can tell, if you're listening to this episode, it's one of the earlier ones. So I'm just getting started on the YouTube channel. So please click like and subscribe on YouTube. And if you're listening to this on Spotify or iTunes or wherever you're listening to this podcast, please consider giving us a 5-star rating. Give me feedback. Let me know what I can do better, and keep coming back for the conversation. I also want to give it a little bit of a teaser that I'm going to have James Benefico, who is he's in the industry as far as supplementation. He has an incredible company, Organic Muscle, located in Austin, Texas. And he's also someone who was a surrogate to the Robert F. Kennedy Jr. campaign. He got to meet Bobby Kennedy during his campaign. He knows him. I have never met him. I reached out to James and said, hey, I really want to get you on to talk about, not only as a healthy CEO yourself, but as someone who has a deep concern for the health and wellness of our fellow Americans, and why Robert F. Kennedy Jr., why he was important to that mission, that goal, that desire to see more Americans get healthy. I want to get his take on it. So be watching for that episode coming up, but let's just get right into it. Okay, so here's my take on it. First and foremost, I'm going to read an article that really brought this episode out. It's the reason why I wanted to come on here with this particular episode about Bobby Kennedy's candidacy. And I know I keep calling him Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and then Bobby Kennedy. I'll pick one of them and stick with it throughout the course of this podcast, I assure you. So if some of you are getting annoyed at the fact that I keep going back and forth, it's not purposeful. It's just sometimes it comes out as Bobby Kennedy. Other times it comes out as Robert F. Kennedy Jr. But Bobby's shorter and more succinct. So let's just go with Bobby, right? And you know who I'm talking about, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Okay, good. So one of the things that has concerned me for a while, and I actually thought about this a while back, I was listening to Peter Attia one day, and he was talking about the American healthcare system. And I thought, how cool would it be if I were to, and I don't have the connections to do this. Peter Attia doesn't know who I am. He probably never will and could care less who I am. But I thought, how cool would it be if I did have the means? And I do know people who are friends with Peter Attia. So what if I started to reach out to those people and said, hey, what do you think the chances are for us to get somebody like Mike Mutzel at High Intensity Health, Lane Norton, PhD, BioLane, who has a huge following, somebody like Andrew Huberman, Peter Attia, Ben Greenfield, bring all these people together, all these health and wellness influencers together to create something like either a political action committee or some sort of a coalition to start influencing legislation as it relates to the food and beverage industries, as it relates to getting them working in coordination with the FDA, getting them to start bringing all these things that you and we love. I mean, most of you, if you're listening to the Healthy CEO, then you probably take supplements, you probably train regularly, you're into things like understanding VO2 max and endothelial health. that's the stuff that you and I, we geek out on, right? That's why I have this podcast. That's why I've co-founded the company I did. And so what if we could bring all these people together to start helping our elected officials better understand what true health and wellness is? And here's the reason why this is such a concern to me is, and again, this isn't an original thought. You've probably heard it, but if you haven't heard it, then let me make my case. We live in a country that, while it is the single most advanced healthcare system on planet Earth, it is designed to be sick care. Healthcare is actually a mislabeling of what is called the American healthcare system, because it's not the American healthcare system. It is the American sick care system. The whole incentive structure is set up for you and I to be sick. Now, I also want to make another disclaimer right now. A lot of people, when they hear that, they're going to want me to, or expect me to go down some rabbit hole about how big pharma is literally trying to keep us sick so they can make more money. Whether that's true or false, right now, that's not the nature of this conversation, and it's not what I want to bring up. All I want to do is tell you this, that hospitals don't make money off of you if you're healthy. Pharmaceutical companies do not make money off of you unless if you're healthy. So the whole thing, your primary care physician, there's a reason why you go to your primary care physician, and while they may tell you if you're sick, if you are suffering from hypertension, if you are metabolically challenged, if your A1C is pushing up to levels that it looks like you might be borderline type 2 diabetic, then they will start to give you some ideas on eating better. They'll probably give you a pamphlet on eating lower sugar foods or something very rudimentary that is really not of any life-changing consequence. But they're not really focused on keeping you healthy and never having to come see them for a prescription or for a diagnosis and a prescription, right? And that's not knocking these primary care physicians. Thank God we have them. We're all going to get sick. The healthiest people in the world are going to get sick. I'm very, very healthy, but I could very well go, get the flu this season. Who knows? The point is, though, we don't have an incentive structure set up to promote really, really good, healthy behaviors. And look, that's what we see. We see these obese people. We go to the grocery store, and it's like there's all these people that you can see are they're trapped inside their own unhealthy body. And it breaks my heart. And Gus Vickery, Dr. Gus Vickery, my business partner at Authentic Health, this is what he's basically devoted his life to in his medical practice, is trying to help these folks, and not in a way, and just so you know, the heart of Authentic Health Partners and Authentic Health, the company that we founded that we're now creating nutraceuticals and products for, and we've got a whole host of things and solutions that we're going to try to bring to you as quickly as we can at the highest quality and the best prices we can. But our whole underlying understanding of human nature is this: you are not in a fair situation. It's just not really fair. And I hate to say that. I'm very much the individualist. You're responsible for yourself. You have agency. So please don't say that I'm shirking responsibility for your health to somebody else and saying that it's everybody else's fault that you're in the shape you're in. That said, not everyone has, first of all, the luxury that what I get to do. And I think about this every day. I work out twice a day. I train twice a day, in the morning and in the afternoon. And every time I do it, the older I get, the more I realize I am so very blessed to be able to do that. Because if I had a certain vocation that caused me to travel all the time, or work ridiculously long hours, or do really crazy physical labor all the time, then I wouldn't do that. I know I wouldn't. So the average Joe six-pack out there living his life, working every day, trying to provide for his family, the mom out there working, trying to provide for her family every day, she's not going to train in the morning, train in the afternoon, and then make sure to maintain perfect macros every day, because her and his head are jumbled with just the regular rigors of day-to-day life. So I want you to know right now, I'm coming at this from a place of understanding and humility, and I'm not saying, get off your ass and do this, I don't care who you are. That's not what this is, and that's just not the underlying attitude of Authentic Health Partners. What we try to do is we realize, hey, the deck has been stacked against the normal average everyday person that can't work out twice a day, that isn't in the health and wellness space. It's just stacked against them. Gus mentions it a number of times in his book, Authentic Health, and then he's got a new one. I think the title's probably going to be called Escape from Comfortville. We did an episode talking about that here recently, in which it kind of outlines how big food and the government and big pharma and everything has basically stacked the deck against the American consumer. You go into a grocery store and behavioral scientists that make a fortune on getting your senses hyped up and understanding how dopamine and all your neurochemicals work, they have created packaging and foods that are hyper tasty, and they use things like MSG, all these poisons and things that are horrible for you to make you just want to crave more and more of the food. And then they put it on your TV screens, they put it on your phones, it's on Instagram and social media. Everything is just flooding you with how wonderful it is to eat this thing, to do this thing, to drink this drink. If if you drink Monster, then you might be a motocross, athlete or whatever the hell the case may be. It's just everything is stacked against us, right? And most people, they aren't, again, they're living their lives. And so they don't know about the toxins in their food and their water and the nutritional deficiencies in their food that they eat every day. And until our politicians start making this a focus, then I don't know that there's ever going to be any legislation or anything that's going to be geared towards that. Now, I am not a big high regulation guy, but I do believe that there is a responsibility for our federal government to at least promote and incentivize good health. So I think it's Geico that always talks about the safe driver discount. We should be rewarding people for healthy living. That is a great way to start pushing people into living healthier, is to incentivize it. What gets measured gets managed. And if you have to measure your A1C, your BMI, which I hate measuring everything by BMI. I've ranted about that before. I think it's a pretty bad metric for health, but nevertheless, it's one that's universally accepted. But things like this, to be able to lower your insurance rates, to make sure that you get some sort of incentive. I don't care if it's a tax break. I don't know what it is. Maybe there will be a world in which, like, I would love this. I would love to see a time where you were able, well, let me back up. If you're not aware of this, if you are on Medicare, the what's it called, the Silver Shoes program, something like that, will actually pay for things like a Peloton, wearables, different things to keep you fit. So I love that. So there are some little bitty signs of that, but why is it only for the elderly? Why is it only for old people? What are the incentives for you and I taking proper supplementation, wearables like Whoop straps and Oura rings, an Apple Watch? Those sorts of things should either be insurable or there should be some sort of an incentive. And again, this is all high-level stuff. I'm not trying to make policy in this conversation, but I do think there needs to be a group of people to come together to start helping these elected officials understand just how valuable these things could be for the overall healthcare system. Because here's where I am going to kind of get in your grill just a little bit. And I'm going to tell you where it comes from after I do. First of all, when it comes to healthcare in America, each and every one of us need to start to understand this. You've got to get this through your head. There is no government policy, no company, nothing, no legislation that can be passed that can give you the power that you currently possess to take care of your health. It is ultimately up to you. And here's what I have found. The healthier I am, the less I worry about American healthcare policy, because I generally don't need it. Now, one day I will. I'm going to get older and I'm going to want my Medicare to be there. I'm going to want it to be secure. I want to know that I'm going to get the care that I need. But what I have done is I have taken the approach that I want to use every tool I have at my personal disposal to be healthy, to be vibrant, to be mentally acute. I want to do all these things I possibly can so that I don't have to depend on what a bunch of politicians say is allowable and not allowable to be paid for and where my dollars go. I don't want to depend on that. So I try to be as healthy as I can. So here's what I encourage you first and foremost. Look in the mirror and say to yourself, you, buddy, you're the one that's going to have to take care of your health care. And it starts with what you eat. It's going to start with good nutrition, exercise, and doing as much as you can. Again, I get it. I have the luxury to do more than most people. Okay, I do. I understand that. But whatever's within your means, at least start thinking about it. So that's where I want to start this. But I also think that as it relates to national health care, we have to collectively get our politicians and our elected officials to start talking about the things that are allowable that are terrible for us. I mean, think about when's the last time any of you listening to this showed up at your child's school and saw a parent smoking anywhere near the building, or you went to a sporting event and saw anybody firing up a ciggy. Smoking has become so taboo in our society. It's more likely and more acceptable for somebody to smoke weed than to smoke a cigarette. And case in point, those of you guys that have listened to either the Jason Wright show or the Healthy CEO, you know that Mrs. Wright and I, we travel to New York quite a bit. We have a daughter that lives in Manhattan. We love to go to the city. I love New York with all of its problems and all of its craziness. We love the city. If you're from New York, I want you to know I come in, I spend my tourism dollars there, and it's expensive as hell, but I love your city. Thanks for letting me come visit. And one of the things that I told my wife here recently, I walked through the park at 9 a.m. and there was a guy sitting on a park bench getting high, smoking weed. I said, it's a shame because you're not supposed to be able to smoke in Central Park altogether, but that guy's not getting in trouble because he's smoking marijuana. Now, if he were smoking a cigarette or cigar, he would have the wrath of NYPD on him, or some do-gooder would come along, some Karen would come and jack him up and yell at him. But he's smoking weed, so one, they're probably kind of scared of the guy because one of the guys smoking pot in the middle of at 9 a.m. in Central Park, I don't want to mess with that guy. And two, it's marijuana. And so we become weird about stuff like this. Well, I'm not saying, it's odd for me to be in this position because we did have somebody like Michael Bloomberg, sticking with New York, that he started trying to come down on how much salt was used, how the big gulps. He started outlawing the big gulps. And I'm not saying that I want any of that. I just don't think that the government playing big brother saying, no, you can't have that, is what we should do. But there has to be some sort of an incentive structure such that people will think twice before making those bad choices. And a lot of this is where the government can step in and start to incentivize through tax incentives or something to give people more reasons to start to behave in a healthier way. So that is something I've been thinking about a great deal. And whenever I saw this article that I found about with Bobby Kennedy and his presidency and why it was important, I thought, this is something that could be one of the best things to ever happen for the American healthcare system, which was Bobby Kennedy running for president. Now, for those of you who are big never Trumpers or whatever, that's not what I'm about to go into. Okay, I'm not saying because Bobby Kennedy endorsed Trump, you should vote for Trump or anything. Please, I keep this a politics-free zone, but I'm making a little bit of an exception today just because of the conversation that I think Bobby Kennedy started with his candidacy. And this is an article that I found from the Daily Wire where who wrote this? Mary Margaret Olohan. And the title of the article is, "There's a Movement Happening, How Trump's Alliance with RFK is Winning Over Wellness Influencers." So you've got a lot of people that in this space that you don't even know their politics. That's the cool thing about health and wellness. Now, I have a lot of these people on my other show, the Jason Wright Show, and now they're coming on the Healthy CEO. I know their politics. I can figure it out because I get this long form conversation with them. And we usually talk a little bit before and a little bit after. So I know their politics. But one of the things that their listeners and their followers don't know is their politics because they kind of stay out of it. But the one thing that we all have in common is we're acutely aware of the problems with health in Western medicine, first and foremost, but particularly in America. So when somebody comes along and is articulating that this is a big enough problem, that it needs a national response, and has some ideas, and by the way, is as healthy as Bobby Kennedy is, then, it's kind of like, okay, wow, it's weird. One of the guys that we would all love to get on our show and talk about longevity and health and wellness and testosterone levels, all this crazy stuff, which is Bobby Kennedy, who was on Joe Rogan, and they had some of these conversations. To have somebody like that at Health and Human Services versus what we've had in the past, that makes all of us, and I know a lot of you that listen to podcasts like this, perk up and go, this is crazy. Maybe we will actually have a congressman, congresswoman, a senator that understands what the hell VO2 max is. How crazy would that be? And I know a lot of these elected officials. I have been around politicians here in Texas at the State House, as well as elected officials from senators to congressmen and congresswomen in Washington, D.C. for decades now. And I can tell you, they're just like many of the people that you see in your family. They don't know anything about the stuff that you and I geek out on. They don't understand. They have no idea why you would ever take an essential amino acid. They have no idea why you would ever supplement with berberine to try to manage your glucose levels. In fact, the only thing they know about managing glucose levels is taking some sort of type 2 diabetes drug. That's all they know. And somebody like Bobby Kennedy can change that. Somebody like Bobby Kennedy can help more people from a national stage understand that there are tools at your disposal that you can match with the agency that you currently have to take control of your own health. And I think that's very important. So let's start with this article. And I want to read this to you because I think it makes some great points about the candidacy of Bobby Kennedy and how it relates to national health. The day that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. endorsed Donald Trump for president, both politicians promised to investigate chronic health issues and corruption with America's health and food ecosystem. Watching Trump and Kennedy's remarks, health and wellness influencer Courtney Swan says she full-blown sobbed. And so Courtney Swan, I'm going to link to her. I guess she has a podcast or something. I didn't know Courtney Swan until this. And so I'm going to figure out who she is and what she's about and hopefully get her on the show so that we can talk about this stuff. But anyway, so we'll get to that. And here, this is a quote from her. "Oh God, I'm getting emotional just thinking about it." Swan shared in a phone interview with the Daily Wire. "I have been waiting my entire adult voting life for a presidential candidate to acknowledge how sick our country is," which for you cynical people out there that know Donald Trump, first of all, that grandpa bloated grandpa bod that he rocks, and the fact that he loves Mickey D's and all this. I mean, he doesn't exactly look at the picture of health, but at least maybe with Bobby Kennedy in his sphere of influence, now he can say, hey, Trump, baby, let's get that BMI a little lower. Let's work on that VO2 max. Let's try to get you a little bit healthier. But anyway, I digress. Swan, whose Real Foodology Instagram account has almost 400,000 followers, isn't the only one who feels this way. The people behind similarly themed accounts told the Daily Wire that their followers are very interested in the Trump-Kennedy alliance, specifically the duo's pledge to fix America's food problem. This isn't the MAGA hat-wearing crowd typically drawn to Trump. Their main interests are health, wellness, and nutrition. Many of them have never voted Republican in their lives, but something changed during the pandemic. The influencers who spoke with the Daily Wire shared, health officials discouraged exercise, encouraged masks, and mandated vaccines, and Americans didn't like it. And I can tell you who didn't like it the most were those of us who are in the health and wellness space. In fact, it was one of the most shocking things, and I know Rogan's talked about it a lot. Mike Mutzel, who has High Intensity Health, Ben Greenfield, Peter Attia, everybody in a kind of trying to, Rogan got hit because he's the king of the mountain on podcasting, but all the others of us out there that were saying anything, one, we knew we'd be taken off YouTube if we said anything that didn't fit the narrative, and two, but we were more than anything just kind of confused and disappointed going, wait a minute, like Gavin Newsom, and again, non-political, I know I have listeners that love Gavin Newsom, some of my friends that are out in LA that I love them to death, and I guarantee you they're fundraisers and supporters of Gavin Newsom. Please don't get angry with me, but the simple fact is Gavin Newsom shut down the beaches in California. Okay, one of the single best things you could do during a pandemic is get sunshine and vitamin D. And so you guys know, I don't have to harp on this. I'm not going to go on some soapbox, but you just know it was really weird during that time. And so those of us in the health and wellness space, that we're there going, wait a minute, sunshine's good, movement is good, getting out in fresh air, there's nothing better. Why are we telling people to sit and stay in and watch Netflix and have food delivered? What's going on? It was really, really bizarre. So anyway, Kennedy drew these newly skeptical Americans in with his frank condemnation of seed oils and processed foods and his disgust for big food and big pharma. Then he dropped out and endorsed Trump, leaving these voters, many of whom never had a home in either major party, wondering if the Diet Coke swilling, McDonald's loving former president would be the leader they've been waiting for. I've been registered independent pretty much my whole life, says, excuse me if I pronounce this name wrong, Ilyana Balaj, founder and CEO of the Low Tox Shop, Live Healthily, and the owner of Healthily Instagram account. Wow, that's a lot. This is probably the first year where someone is finally talking about what America really needs right now, real health and wellness, and bringing down the biggest corporations that have monopolized everything from food products that we use every single day. Okay, here's the thing. I can almost guarantee you, well, I don't know. I'd like to look into the dietary habits of the CEOs of Nabisco, and Hostess, or whomever, the private equity company that owns Hostess now. A lot of this crap that we see on our grocery shelves, I can almost assure you that the CEOs of these companies are not eating their products very often. It's kind of like, how many times would, like the CEO of Philip Morris probably doesn't smoke, I would think. I wonder, that would be good to know, how many of the CEOs of tobacco companies actually smoke cigarettes. Now, back during the day in the 50s and 60s when everybody else smoked, I'm sure they did. But now, I mean, how many, look in your life, how many people that are uber wealthy smoke cigarettes these days? I don't think there's that many of them. Anyway, Balaj argues that female voters in particular could be drawn to a candidate who makes health and wellness a part of their campaign. Women are the ones buying the food, and they're in the supermarkets every single day. They're the ones at the supermarket reading labels, and they're the ones being marketed, she explained. Whether or not it comes up in Tuesday's presidential debate, Trump seems more than willing to expand the GOP's famous big tent to include these crunchy voters. He's even got a new slogan just for them: Make America Healthy Again. And I think I'm going to get some hats with the Healthy CEO green, reading just that, and that's going to be the first thing I put in my merch, is a Make America Healthy Again hat, because that to me is spot on. Putting our country at risk. Chronic diseases like diabetes, cancer, and heart disease are the leading causes of death in the United States, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And the leading drivers of the nation's $4.5 trillion in annual health care costs. Close to 30% of American teens are pre-diabetic, and more than 18% of young adults have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and cancer rates among young people are rising. Experts have predicted that by 2030, almost half the United States adults will be severely obese, and data from the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey found that 93% of Americans are metabolically unhealthy. 6 out of 10 adults in America are living with a chronic illness, Kennedy wrote in the Wall Street Journal last week. 74% of American adults are overweight or obese. Rates of kidney disease and autoimmune conditions are going up. Cancer rates among young people are rising. This is despite Americans spending more and more to treat many of these conditions. U.S. life expectancy is markedly lower than in every other developed country, with wide disparities between income classes. All right, I want to pause there for a minute. So here's what we have to understand, and this is something that Gus and I have talked about on this show as well as my other show many times. We were not designed, our bodies, you and I, we were not designed for the environment in which we currently live. We weren't. We were more designed to live out on the Serengeti, where a saber-toothed tiger could kill us, and we had to hunt and gather our food, and we had to move long distances to track animals, and we had to, there was a lot of fasting, all those. That's why you hear so much about ancestral health, is because the way our ancestors looked at food and the food they ate was much more in line with our body's design. Now, that's not to say things are bad. In fact, things are awesome. Things are amazing right now. You and I get to eat and live better than 17th century kings and queens, and even if we were lower middle class. Hell, even if you're poor in America, I guarantee you, you have more luxuries than royalty had in the 1700s. So it's not a bad thing, but here's the thing you have to understand. Because we were not made for this overabundance of incredibly tasty, cheap, easy to access foods, we have to condition our minds. We have to be made aware of that. And again, this is where you and you're listening to the Healthy CEO podcast. If you're listening to the Healthy CEO, you probably listen to other podcasts about health. You read about health. You take care of your health. You run a business and you want to be somebody that takes care of your mind, your body as the single most vital business machine you have. So you think, what the hell? This guy is a healthy CEO. I'm a CEO. I want to be healthy. Let's see what this guy has to say. You and I get it. But a lot of people, they don't. They're just like if our ancestors, imagine this. You take some dude from the Serengeti and you plop him into 2024 in a grocery market. Now, this guy's used to have to leave the cave and go out and risk his life to get food for him and his family. Okay? That's what he's used to. He's used to hunger. He's used to heat. He's used to moving on foot forever. He's never tasted something as sweet as many of them. They've never tasted fruit. They've never had an apple, an orange. I guarantee you, if that person were to plop into a modern day 2024 supermarket, they would eat until they just, I mean, my gosh, they couldn't understand, they couldn't comprehend. It'd be sensory overload. They'd be eating every single thing they could get their hands on, the good, the bad, all of it. Now, you and we cognitively think about that, go, yeah, that's a guy that's completely ignorant to what that stuff can do to them. Well, guess what, friends? I hate to tell you this. Many of our fellow Americans don't have a lot more understanding of the damage that these seemingly innocuous foods have on their body. They don't understand. And they're not stupid, but they're ignorant. You know why? Because they don't do what we do. They're not eating and breathing this stuff every single day. Again, they're putting roofs on houses. They're plumbing. They're doing people's taxes. They're practicing law. They're doing all these other things. They're focused on that. They're not focused on red dyes and how much something was processed, or looking at the natural peanut butter and realizing there's one that's literally just ground up peanuts and the other that's full of high industrial seed oils. They don't know. So I think it's incumbent upon the government to at least, one, start to do a better job of educating people, and somebody with the profile of a Bobby Kennedy can start moving towards that direction. But also, I think that some of these food companies need to be held to account. If you're going to put warning labels all over cigarettes and cigars, and you're going to crack down on them, then maybe we need to start attacking the health industry the same way, because they use the exact same tactics. The same behavioral scientists that work for the tobacco companies, they go to work for the big food companies. They know how to get our fellow Americans addicted to cheap, tasty foods. They know how to make our foods not only smell the way we smell so that we'll want more, taste so that we'll want more, but they know how to make us feel like the crunch, just enough softness, just enough chewiness. They know how to tap into all of our senses to make us want more and more and more. It's no accident that bags of chips have quadrupled in size. It's no coincidence that all of our packaged goods have gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. It's because the food companies want you to eat more and more and more. And guess what? We have followed suit and gotten fatter and fatter and fatter and less healthy. Over the past few years, particularly during and after the COVID-19 outbreak, many Americans have started to pay more attention to these spiraling health issues. High-profile figures like Kennedy, fitness expert Jillian Michaels have become more and more outspoken about their concerns that American nutritional information is confusing and harming consumers, warning that products on typical American grocery shelves are loaded with ultra-processed foods containing harmful seed oils, chemicals, and toxins. Our chronic sick condition is putting our country at risk, warned Swan. Popular social media influencers like Carnivore Aurelius have drawn attention to the topic while arguing that the key to a healthier lifestyle lies in consuming whole foods and red meat, getting plenty of sunshine, and totally avoiding seed oils. At the same time, big food appears to be preparing for battle. The Wall Street Journal reported in January 2024 that the food industry is rallying to push back and defend processed foods regardless of the human costs. Now, here's the thing that I think is interesting. There's two things that the big food industry has on their side. One, they got the fat shaming crowd. You're not supposed to tell anybody that you shouldn't be fat. You can't talk about that anymore. So, and big food knows that. Secondly, they know that it's food. It's food. It's nutrition. It will never be held to the same account, excuse me, as something like a vice, like alcohol or cigarettes, tobacco. It's not going to be, they won't treat us like that. But here's the thing. And I'm really kind of conflicted in this regard, because I don't want, personally, I don't know about you, but I don't want to live in a world or see a day where foods like, some of the good foods you just get to eat as a kid, your body can take it. I want to be able to, my grandkids, I want to be able to give them a Hostess cupcake every once in a while. I want them to experience the wonders of a Twinkie maybe every once in a while. I don't know if I'll let them have Twinkies or Hostess cupcakes. I don't know. I don't have grandkids yet. I'll make that decision when the time comes. I'm not saying I want to treat necessarily those things like cigarettes and alcohol, but something needs to be done to disincentivize people, or at least make them alerted to the dangers that those cause. Because here's the thing. Much of the reason, besides transferring healthcare into the workforce, meaning that most of us get our health care through our employer, that was a huge mistake. Taking insurance, making it more of a third-party situation out of the hands, and thus making and also creating this environment where it's somebody else's responsibility to take care of our health than ours. I mean, like that somewhere along the way, I guess it was around World War II, whenever workers were in short supply, employers started offering health coverage. And so therefore people were getting richer health coverage, and they were able to go to the doctor and somebody else was paying the bill. And then that ballooned, the government got in on the game, started incentivizing, subsidizing, and created this false economic market to where now it's like, if I get sick and I have to pay $1,000 to get myself better, that somehow that's a crime. I shouldn't have to do that. That somebody else should take care of my health, because you got people like Bernie Sanders saying healthcare is a right. So my rights are being violated when I have to pay to take care of myself. Now, we don't say that when we say we've got to get new tires for our car. We don't say that when we have to get an oil change. We don't say anything. We just, or if we're in a car wreck, we don't expect, somebody else has to pay for this. No, we say, I'm insured. I got to pay for insurance. Anything the insurance doesn't cover, my deductible, I have to pay for it. We understand that. But with our health, it's been different. So that's one of the things I think that was a downfall for our healthcare. But then also, whenever we had this overabundance of all this stuff, we just eat whatever we wanted, and we became very, very unhealthy as a nation, and that started driving up the population of sick people, metabolically challenged people, cardiovascularly challenged and sick people, that put a strain on the healthcare system, made it more expensive. And by the way, like this article says, much of this hits lower socioeconomic folks. I mean, again, being very sensitive. People at the lower rung of the socioeconomic ladder, they're not listening to Andrew Huberman, most likely. They're just look at the demographics. It's just not, they're not listening to Tim Ferriss. They're not out there figuring out what the best kettlebell workout is. No, they're trying to freaking survive this thing called life. Okay. So I'm sensitive to that, and I hope you are too. But we've got to educate folks on how they can actually take control of their health, and it needs to be done at a national level. Behind the scenes, food industry proponents have also begun pressing for more oversight of government-funded research on ultra-processed foods, according to industry lobbyists, reported the Journal's Jesse Newman. Less processing, they say, could lead to more food waste, higher prices, and problems for consumers who might struggle to store more fresh foods. Meanwhile, the governments of Canada, Mexico, Peru, Brazil, and Israel have urged citizens to limit their consumption of these highly processed foods, the Wall Street Journal reports. The Colombian government began taxing purchasing of ultra-processed foods last year, and French manufacturers have started labeling products to help consumers understand how much they have been processed. Trump's focus on chronic health issues actually predates Kennedy's endorsement. He released a video in early June announcing a plan to address chronic illness and other health problems, particularly among children. He also pointed to increasing concerns that Big Pharma is profiting from American health issues. It is time to ask, what is going on? The Republican nominees said in this video, is it the food that they eat, the environment that we live in, the overprescription of certain medications? Is it the toxins and chemicals that are present in our homes? Pause right there. That right there. And look, this is going to sound like just a blatant sales pitch because in a way it is. Gus Vickery, my physician and my business partner, literally created our foundational stack that you can get at shopauthentic.health.com because of this reason. Now, if you go there to get the foundational stack to defend against these things, fine. If you don't, I don't care. There's plenty of stuff we put out to where you can go to other places and get supplementation to help you better defend against exactly this. The environment we live in, the overprescription of medications that we're taking, the toxins and chemicals that are present in our homes, in our water, on our grass, all of it. Those are the things that led Gus Vickery, my business partner, one of the best physicians in Asheville, North Carolina, one of the best physicians in the country, to focus his practice on precision medicine. Because what he kept seeing when patients would come in, and now it's thousands of patients over the last nearly 3 decades, he's seeing that they keep coming in with the same problems that are caused by the same things. Toxins, bad food, ultra-processed foods full of toxins, and not getting enough sun, all these things. And a lot of it just has to do with their natural habitat and their environment that our bodies were not designed to live in. And so that's why he started to focus his practice on precision medicine and functional health and longevity to help people not only make decisions that would naturally help defend against this environment that we've all got to be here, right? We're all going to have to endure some of the toxins that are around us, but also then to start creating products that would help supplement and even give your body that extra ability to thrive in the midst of this toxic environment that we're all in. So I think it's kind of interesting that literally that was we couldn't have said that better at Authentic Health Partners, that these are some of the problems. It's time to ask what's going on. And that's the thing that Gus Vickery answered years ago when he kept seeing his patients over and over coming in with these same illnesses, these same blood test results. And he said, what is going on? And then he figured it out. Then he started trying to figure out solutions. And the result of it is Authentic Health. Okay. When Trump took the stage in Arizona to accept Kennedy's endorsement on August 26, he praised Kennedy's decades of work as an advocate for the health of our families and our children. Nobody's done more, he said of Kennedy. Millions and millions of Americans who want clean air, clean water, and a healthy nation have concerns about toxins in our environment and pesticides in our foods. That is why today I'm repeating my pledge to establish a panel of top experts working with Bobby to investigate what is causing the decades-long increase in chronic health problems and childhood diseases, including autoimmune disorders, autism, obesity, infertility, and many more, Trump added. We want every child in America to grow up and to live a long and healthy life. Caroline Leavitt, Trump's national press secretary, emphasized to the Daily Wire that the former president is extremely aware of the current health crisis, from the rise of chronic childhood illnesses to the high price of health care and insurance that hardworking families simply cannot afford. Trump plans to establish a special presidential commission staffed with people who are not bought and paid for by Big Pharma. I'm raising my hand. I will be a part of that as a CEO and co-founder of a company. I want to be a part of this. I want to help shape some of this policy. She told the Daily Wire that commissions will be in charge with investigating what is causing the decades-long increase in chronic illnesses, which we know a lot of that. You and I that listen to, those of you who listen to podcasts way bigger than this one, You listen to Ben Greenfield and again, Lane Norton and even Lex Friedman and these guys that get amazing, Mark Hyman, all these guys that get amazing experts on and listen. You and I, we know this. We have these answers. And that's the thing, guys. Those of us who are in this community, you listen to the podcast, those of you who are fellow podcasters, those of you who are health coaches, nutritionists, we have got to start now more than ever putting our hands together and screaming the things that we know. It's no longer just this niche little thing where we can kind of get into longevity and check out Brian Johnson, the blueprint guy, and think, oh, that's cool, I'll try that, and maybe I'll go get a Juvelite, and then maybe I'll start, doing, cold plunges for the gram. No, we need to start telling all of our fellow Americans, hey, this isn't just some crazy niche stuff that a bunch of crunchy guys and a bunch of tech entrepreneurs and whatever are doing because they think it's cool. This is stuff that really works, and it needs to be more universally accepted and understood. And you guys, we can be a part of this solution. I hope you'll join me in this. So anyway, let's see. Kennedy echoed his sentiment in his endorsement. Don't you want healthy children? Kennedy asked when he endorsed Trump's to strong applause. Don't you want the chemicals out of our food? Don't you want the regulatory agencies to be free from corporate corruption? That's what President Trump told me that he wanted. Don't you want a president that's going to make America healthy again? Kennedy's endorsement made Balaj a lifelong independent, 100% open to voting for Trump. That's not something I would typically jump to, but this is such an important topic, especially because it is now affecting children. How else do we fight against these giant monopolies if not someone in the government rooting for us, she asked. Swan 2, which, by the way, pause. I remember when I was growing up, when George H.W. Bush was president, Arnold Schwarzenegger had been put as like the head of the National Commission for Fitness. That was awesome. You had somebody you could look to and go, freaking Arnold Schwarzenegger. That's what we need, is somebody back like that that's not so, I don't know how to describe it. Maybe it's Bobby Kennedy, that's a more serious approach to it. But we need to get back to a time where, health and wellness was something that was spoken of at the national level. I really think that this stuff's important. Swan 2 described the endorsement as a game changer. I've been voting liberal my entire adult life, she said. I voted blue my entire life. This is a huge turning point for me because this is my opinion, the biggest issue of our time right now. One main concern of health influencers like Balaj is the intentional confusion around what's healthy and what's not. This is what just really is mind-blowing, and this is why I think personal agency is so very important. We live in these crazy times where down is up is down. I mean, it's literally Misfit Island a lot of days. If you listen to the national media, that we've got trains with wheels on them. We got fish flying, birds swimming. It is Misfit Island. So you've got to take the agency that you have and the knowledge that we're able to grasp and figure out what is real. The day after Kennedy endorsed Trump, Time published a piece headlined. This is not made up. You can go look it up. What if ultra-processed foods aren't as bad as you think? The piece featured a single dietitian who suggested that ultra-processed foods, those made almost entirely from food extracts or synthetic ingredients, had been given a bad rap. It was a far cry from a piece Time published a year prior titled, Why Ultra-Processed Foods Are So Bad for You. They literally reversed the subject of the article. I mean, it's like, are you freaking kidding me? And this, friends, is why ideology kills. This is why ideology can be one of the most devastating and terrible things that we can all get wrapped up in. Because ideology is what makes a group in a newsroom go, maybe, just maybe, we should publish an article that convinces people that it's okay to eat ultra-processed foods. Maybe we should do that. After all, if we say the contrary, if we say the other, then it might boost this other guy getting into office, and we can't have that. That's why ideology is a very terrible thing. Many found the magazine's about face suspicious, including Swan, who went viral with an Instagram post asking Time, who paid you? Well done, Swan. After the ensuing backlash, Time altered the headline to read, "Why One Dietitian is Speaking Up for Ultra-Processed Foods." But health influencers point to the piece as an example of how mainstream media does the bidding of big food corporations, which here's the thing that all of us need to realize right now, okay? And this isn't conspiratorial. It's just the truth. It's just admitting the truth, okay? When you see the Matrix, you got to realize you're in the Matrix. When you think you're getting news because these people really, they're the watchdog, they're the third, whatever is the third level, the third rail of government or whatever it's called, not the third rail, but I'm drawing a blank on the actual terminology, but nevertheless, they are supposed to be the watchdogs, you know, the people that are watching those in power and calling them out. That's what you think the media is, that they're like a public service. They're not. They are absolutely not. You know what they're there to do? They're there to give you something to look at in between commercials. See, you think when you watch a television program, you think when you watch a newscast that you're watching a newscast. No, you're just watching the filler in between the sales pitches. That's all it is. And I'm not saying it's nefarious or bad. They're under no obligation to give us some sort of just, public service. PBS is supposed to be that, but that's a different story. I'm not going to get into it. But bottom line is, it's all just entertainment. Why do you think all the news is bad? It's because it gets your amygdala going. The behavioral scientists, again, they know what will get your eyeballs on the news, so they're going to report to you the worst and most egregious things that are happening so that you will stay there in between commercials, and you'll stay and watch the commercials because you don't want to miss what's in between. That's the way this works. I mean, did you know that a lot of toys were created to sell cereal? That's right. That's right. A lot of the toys that I grew up, seeing like He-Man and Dungeons and Dragons, all this stuff or whatever, a lot of that crap, that little toys and trinkets and action figures, they were created to sell cereal, not the other way around. It's all about selling and making money. And look, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm a capitalist. I do think there's some over commercialization. I don't think that's an overstatement. But look, you got to know what you're dealing with. These companies, they know who their masters are. They know who signs their checks. Remember what I've taught you. The media isn't on your side. They're in bed with the advertisers who want to continue to profit off your illness. Swan told her followers, do the opposite of what the mainstream media tells you so that you can thrive. And it's a shame that that's the case, but it's almost, if the media, if the popular mantra of the day is to do one thing, you better question it. I mean, I'm telling you, especially if it's a major news outlet telling you this is what you should do, you got to question it because there's dollars behind it. There's incentive behind it somewhere, most likely. Meanwhile, U.S. health authorities have not released clear guidance on how to approach ultra-processed foods. The FDA, without directly addressing processed foods, told the Daily Wire that it is focused on creating a healthier food supply, empowering consumers, and helping establish healthy starts for younger populations. I find it absolutely mind-blowing that science can't figure out a food scale for what an ultra-processed food is. Feels like they just won't determine that because of all the lobbying and corruption, Balaj said, or shared. At the same time, she pointed out Instagram and TikTok are flush with influencer dietitians who are paid to promote products full of addictive and harmful additives, sometimes even claiming these products are clean. She also takes issue with an online narrative that consuming ultra-processed foods in moderation is fine, pointing out that additives are in everything from milk to protein bars. Alex Clark, host of the Culture Apothecary podcast, says she's leaned heavily into health and wellness topics in recent months due to her predominantly conservative female audience's avid interest in these topics. And according to Clark, she has seen a huge uptick in female enthusiasm for Trump after Kennedy's endorsement. People think I'm making things up about the female enthusiasm for Trump post RFK Jr. announcement. She posted on X on August 25th. Before this week, if I posted a link to register to vote, maybe 60 clicks. After this announcement, I had over 1,700 plus clicks to register. My followers on Instagram are almost exclusively conservative women. Because of the RFK endorsement, women are telling me they are willing to publicly say they're voting Trump for the first time, she added. Clark told the Daily Wire that her audience's top 3 issues are inflation, abortion, and fighting big food and big pharma. Obviously, they have it in the bag with the Trump on inflation. He's going to take care of that, she said of her followers in a phone interview. I think they've been a little disheartened by the wishy-washy, soft on abortion commentary that has been really disheartening for some of them to the point where they were unsure how they wanted to vote. Then came RFK Jr.'s endorsement and Trump's ongoing comments on chronic illness, which together registered so much hope and excitement for voting for Trump, Clark said. It's a major public health concern, the fact that chronic disease is now skyrocketing, explained Max Lugavere, I guess, the author of Genius Foods, whose Instagram account boasts a massive 1.2 million followers. Lugavere shared with the Daily Wire that the 2024 election comes up all the time in his direct messages. I think people are sick of being lied to in ways that are both explicit and more covert. And they want to see real change, he shared. I do my best to highlight some of the lunacy that we see, whether with regard to the mainstream media's coverage of their wellness-related topics or even from the field of nutrition science itself. Lugavere, who hasn't endorsed a candidate yet, observed that the Biden-Harris administration does not discuss these issues and that he doesn't see them doing it anytime soon. What gives me hope is the campaign that RFK has done on behalf of the chronic disease epidemic and the fact that he now seems to have the ear of Donald Trump, he said. It gives me optimism that this is going to get more significant attention. People are now more aware than ever of just how dire a need we have for real solutions and advocacy and education around these topics, Lugavere emphasized. I'm going to vote for the party that makes those issues a priority, he emphasized. I'm definitely partial to whatever party puts more emphasis on the fact that we do have more agency in regards to our health, specifically lifestyle and nutrition. The Harris campaign did not respond to requests for comment. Swan has echoed Lugavere's sentiments on her social media platform, something the usually apolitical influencer tends to shy away from. With few exceptions, she says the majority of messages were from followers enthusiastically agreeing with her. This is so incredibly important, she paraphrased the Daily Wire. Thank you for speaking up about this. There's a movement happening, Swan said. Many people are writing to me saying, I voted blue my whole life. Now I'm changing course. Okay, and that's it. So here's the thing that I think that we have to start. There's a moment where we can take advantage. Those of us who really care about this stuff, and you want to see the healthcare system change, if you want to see people get healthier, if like you, it hurts your heart to see so many unhealthy people, and it makes you absolutely angry when you see people celebrated for being unhealthy, then I think that we need to make sure to speak out on these issues and make this an issue. If this election is just about anti-Trump, pro-gay, pro-abortion, anti-abortion, just these little sliver issues that drive the left and the right to the polls, then I think we're missing a golden opportunity somewhere in the argument on gun rights, abortion, all the other things that get all the attention needs to be health. And it doesn't need to just be about quote unquote health care and insurance. I mean, frankly, I'm sick and damn tired of hearing everybody talk about how are we going to get people's medical bills paid? Why don't we talk about how to get them to where they don't even need a damn medical bill? How about that? Why don't we talk about how to keep them healthy? Why don't we help educate them? Why don't we start incentivizing people to not have medical bills at all? Now, granted, this can't be done. I mean, I've got people in my family. My daughter did not ask to be diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. Okay, she didn't ask for that. Nothing she could have done. Okay, so therefore, and those are people, and she's one of millions with just that disease alone. So I'm sensitive. I'm not saying that just take care of yourself and don't have to go to the doctor, get healthy. No, I'm not saying that. But what we do need to do is try to create an ecosystem where more people are aware of the dangers that they cause themselves by not paying attention to their health. And then we need to start focusing on behaviors and things to where if you don't have a medical bill, and you could be somebody like I started this whenever I became self-employed and I became an entrepreneur, and I realized, whoa, health insurance is really expensive. And the one thing I can do to make sure that there's more money in the pot for Rylan and Abby, my daughters, is to stay healthy myself. That was my approach. And so when I was younger, that's what I did. I had catastrophic health insurance, and I want to make sure I don't have to go to the doctor. I don't need help. I want to save whatever money we may need for these two little kids, my two little girls that are going to they're little girls. They're going to need more attention from the doctors and the pediatricians than I'm going to need if I keep myself healthy. So that's what we need to start doing. And so I think just when you strip it all away, a part of the national health conversation that I'm hoping Bobby Kennedy can bring to it, even if Trump doesn't win, I hope that people won't just, and look, when people, and I'm not a toady for Bobby Kennedy Jr. This is the first thing I've ever said about Bobby Kennedy. So those of you who think he's just this anti-vax nut, that's not what I'm talking about. And look, and you think that if you want to just judge him about that, all the people I've mentioned today, Lane Norton, Mark Hyman, Ben Greenfield, Andrew Huberman, let me tell you something. There are a number of things that those folks will argue about. Lane Norton will tell you can eat all these highly processed foods and everything, just eat it in moderation because he's all about macros and he knows the science. He can show you the science behind it. He doesn't say you should eat a bag of Skittles for lunch every day. He doesn't say that, but he also says if you stay consistent and you manage your health and you exercise and you train and 90% of the time you're eating healthy, then that 10% where you go off the rails and you have a bag of Skittles, your body can handle it, but you have to do the things to make your body handle it. So I want Lane Norton talking to more people. Point being, just because Lane Norton says you can eat Skittles and yet you've got somebody else out there that's going to say, oh my God, how could Lane Norton say that with the dyes and the sugars and all the toxins in Skittles, they're going to kill you, and those two butt heads. Well, Bobby Kennedy, when it comes to vaccines and him being the anti-vaxxer and all that, people say, oh, shut him down, be quiet. We can't listen to him because he has this on vaccines. Well, there's another, whether you agree with that or not, are you really going to argue that his message is wrong on the fact that eating whole, non-processed foods is good for you? That more people should be doing that? That more people should be exercising, getting sunshine? That we should be looking at why, the root cause of why Americans are so fat and unhealthy? Is that wrong? Is that really bad? I don't think so. I think it's worth taking a look at what Bobby Kennedy has to say. And that's the main message for today's show is we have got to bring this to the forefront. We got to get over this idea that, and look, people need to know that a lot of the crap in the grocery store is poisonous. The dose, makes the poison. And so it's, again, that's why I'm not saying I'm never going to give one of my grandbabies a Twinkie whenever Rylan and Abby dropping them off with this to stay with this guy, with Paw. I'm not saying they're not ever getting a Twinkie, but they're not going to get a whole box of Twinkies because they're going to know that too much of this is poison. One Twinkie is not poisonous. 12 Twinkies becomes poisonous. And people need to know this. I hope you get what I'm saying. I hope nothing I said came off as judgmental or haughty. I know people might try to make it that way. Honestly, I realize the position that I'm in. And by the way, you're in it too if you're listening to this show. We have the luxury of processing this through whatever means that I'm not saying we didn't work our asses off to get here to be healthy. I'm not saying we didn't work our asses off, that we have the luxury of me to sit behind this microphone and do a podcast, and you have the luxury of listening to the podcast and to be able to go out and do things about it. I'm very cognizant of that. But here's the thing. I want every single person to have the opportunity and the knowledge to be as healthy as they possibly can. And who knows, maybe Bobby Kennedy being in an administration can help make that come to pass. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Jason Wright. I'm the Healthy CEO. Here's to your health.
The content provided in this podcast, The Healthy CEO, is for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. The opinions expressed by our host and guest are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Healthy CEO. Any information provided by our host or guest, including any physicians who may appear on the podcast, is solely for informational purposes and does not create any doctor-patient relationship. Listeners are advised to consult with their healthcare providers before making any changes to their health routine. The Healthy CEO and its affiliates assume no responsibility or liability for any consequence resulting directly or indirectly from any action or inaction you take based on the information provided in this podcast.